Killer Innovations Podcast for Monday, February 20th, 2006. Show number 46, coming to you from Sunnyvale, California. Welcome to this week's Killer Innovations Podcast. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we get started, please keep in mind that the information and opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine alone, and do not necessarily reflect those of my past, current, or future employers. Well, I'm back from Spain. While I was there for the 3GSM Wireless Industry Conference, I had an opportunity to meet with two listeners of the podcast. As a result of kind of the feedback from them and feedback from emails that I've received from a number of listeners, I've created a new page on the Killer Innovations site showing the dates of upcoming events where I will be. I've got some in Europe, I've got some in Asia Pacific, just to make it easier for the listeners to be able to identify the dates and cities that I'll be in hopes that we can meet up. If you go out to the Killer Innovations site, it's actually, the link is posted yesterday onto the blog. You can click on that link and it'll take you to the list of the current dates. Now that is not a complete list. I'll be updating that list here over the next month or so with additional appearances and speaking engagements and industry events that I will be at in the high-tech industry. If you think that you might be able to meet up, go ahead and post a comment on that particular event listing, and then what we'll try to do is coordinate a meetup of all the listeners at a particular event. In addition, here in Northern California, San Francisco, Silicon Valley area, a number of listeners have recommended a specific meetup of all the listeners here in the Bay Area. So I'm working on pulling that together, and a couple of listeners here in the Bay Area have actually volunteered to help pull that off. So my guess is it's probably going to be sometime in early April, maybe getting together on a Friday night or Saturday for lunch, someplace here in the Bay Area for all the listeners. So if you're in the Bay Area, drop me an email, and I'll put you on the list, and we'll see about getting a specific date on the schedule. Keep the feedback coming. Coming up on show number 50. And in show 50, I'm actually going to be playing pretty much all listener feedback, audio feedback that I have saved up. Hopefully I'll have enough to fill a show. Right now I don't, so please send me your audio feedback. You can either send it to me just as an audio file attached to an email, or you can just call the voicemail feedback line at 703-636-4460 and leave me the voicemail comment, and then that gets mailed to me as an MP3 file that I can use. You can always send me email at podcast@killerinnovations.com, or you can Skype me at Phil_McKinney. Yesterday, we also had a brief conference call with a number of the listeners who are volunteering to help with the redesign of the website. We need two skill sets yet to join the team. One is somebody with a graphics background, and we also need somebody who is really strong in CSS, or cascading style sheets. So if you're familiar with either one of those two, or you have those skill sets and would like to contribute those to the redesign of the site for the community, then just drop me an email and I'll plug you in with Nick and Chris and the others who are leading the site redesign for Killer Innovations. Moving on to today's show, segment number 1, the Innovation Toolkit. Now, over the years, as I've been working both as an employee of corporations and also as a consultant to corporations, I've kind of developed this little toolkit that I always carry with me. Now, there's things in here that are kind of unique to me, but there are things that I think that might be unique to you. Now, I actually have two different kinds of toolkits. One that I always carry with me, keep in a little bag that I always throw into the briefcase or throw in the suitcase and take it with me, so I have it with me in the hotel rooms. And then I actually have a fairly large case that I carry with me when I'm actually going to be running a more formal killer innovations workshop. I'm going to just focus on the kit that I normally carry with me when I travel, not the big kit, toolkit that I use when I'm actually running a workshop. Maybe I'll cover that in an upcoming podcast. Now, your innovation toolkit may be different, but these are things that help you get creative, work on ideas, so that you're not confined to only working on ideas when you're sitting in your home or sitting in your office, but that you get used to by having tools with you. You can leverage these tools from wherever you're at and be creative wherever you happen to be. So let's start with some of the obvious items. First off, pens. Now you may think that's kind of a stupid thing to have a toolkit that's kind of obvious, you got to write. But in my case, I am very picky on the pens that I use. For me, particularly, I use Uniball Micros, and this is kind of one of those real fanatical things for me, and drives my wife nuts, drives my kids nuts, because I'm scrambling around. There's lots of pens in the house, but I can't find my pens that I want to use. And I guess this comes from the fact that when I first started college, my original major was architecture. So I come from a graphics background. I come from the old days of actually using pencil and then inking your drawings, etc. So for me, having the right pen is critical. It's kind of like writers. Writers have to have the right pen, or they have to have their typewriter set up in the right corner of the room in the old days, or even writers today. So for me, it's pens. The other thing that I always carry with me is Post-it notes. Now, I carry the little square ones, not the micro ones, but kind of the medium-sized one. I always have one or two pads sitting inside in my briefcase. Now, what I have found in hotel rooms is that mirrors make excellent places to put up the Post-it notes. Because the biggest challenge in a hotel room is most hotel rooms have textured walls, and it becomes very hard or impossible to post anything on the walls that will stick. But what I have found is like sliding glass doors, mirrors in bathrooms, even better, Marriott in a lot of the rooms now have put these big mirrors in the main part of the hotel room. Excellent places to put up Post-it notes, move things around, reorganize them, etc. The other that I always carry with me is whiteboard markers. Now, many of you may think, well, you're not going to have a whiteboard in a hotel room. Well, what I've also learned, though, is that glass is actually a good material to write on with these whiteboard markers. Now, here's my disclaimer. I assume no responsibility if you use a marker that actually does damage to glass or does damage to a hotel room. You assume that responsibility. So test it out in the corner. Some films that they put on glass in certain parts of the country, and these are films that are reflective for sunlight in areas that get very, very hot, do not like the alcohol that's in the whiteboard markers. But in the U.S., most of the sliding glass doors and that, you can actually use whiteboard markers. And the reason I like to use whiteboard markers is simply from the standpoint of sometimes I'm doing a drawing that's more graphically oriented, and I like to have big areas to draw on. In my office, in my house, I actually have the largest magnetic whiteboard that you can purchase. It's like 8 feet long. The thing weighs a ton. I use magnets to manipulate index cards that I have drawings on or whatever, getting things in the right order, organizing, kind of doing mind mapping, but using index cards to be able to move things around easily. So I'm big on whiteboard. I always carry a whiteboard marker with me, and I know that some cleaning people have given me kind of strange looks when they come in and they see all the drawings on like a sliding glass door. And the other piece with that, though, is always carrying a digital camera, because when you draw on the sliding glass doors, it's not like you can take the sliding glass door, fold it up, stick it in your briefcase, and carry it with you. So always carry a digital camera. You can snap a picture of whatever you've drawn on the sliding glass door, or if you're actually in an office and you actually have done something on the whiteboard, you can then snap the picture with the digital camera and have it forwarded around. The other piece, and many of you, if you've been a long-time listener to this podcast, know that I'm a big fan of notebooks. And in fact, I probably have, hundreds of notebooks. My wife has now collected them up into a Tupperware container. And I have no less than 2 or 3 that I'm carrying with me in my briefcase at any one time. In this case, I'm also pretty finicky. Over the last 10 years, I've gotten hooked on using moleskin notebooks, and that's all I use now. In fact, I probably have an inventory stockpile of 10 of them, different sizes, because I actually carry different sizes, some with graph paper, some are sketchbooks. But I always have inventory on hand so that I never have to go into a situation where I don't have a notebook when I use up the one that I'm carrying with me. And then last but not least, index cards. And for me, these are blank index cards that have no lines on them on the front or the back. And I can't quite figure out why I continue to do index cards. And in fact, I'm sitting here doing the podcast with index cards in my hands. I use them to map out the subjects and the topics to be discussed in the podcast. But the reason I use index, and the only reason I can kind of rationalize why I still use index cards is this is kind of a leftover habit from college when I used to use the old computer punch cards for doodling, sketching, reminders, to-do lists, etc. And since I can't get a hold of computer punch cards anymore, I've kind of rolled over onto using index cards. And then index cards are also always something that I have with me in my kit. Now, there are 2 things that I typically have with me also that are not so obvious. Beyond, the pens and Post-it notes and whiteboard markers and carry my notebook. But one that I carry with me is what's called the Whack Pack cards. Now, these are sets of cards. You can actually purchase them. I'll have them up on the website so that you can see the supplier. These are the cards that were the companion offering to the creativity book called Whack on the Side of Your Head. And these are made up of 64 cards that kind of present the overall themes or approaches to creativity from the standpoint of helping you kickstart your ideas, help you change your perspective. In my case, I go through the Whack Pack when I'm coming into kind of a creativity block where I'm just can't seem to get started on generating some ideas, or I'm kind of stuck in the rut of kind of the more obvious ideas in response to a particular problem that I'm trying to solve. So in this case, I'll take out the cards and I'll randomly pick a card, and then I force myself to create a custom killer question based on the card that I have in my hand. And then I'll use that killer question really to kick off a brainstorming session. So my cards, actually I have like 3 or 4 sets. The cards that I have with me are getting a little tattered and torn. Box doesn't stand up very well, so I've got mine bound up in a rubber band. But this is, again, kind of what I use is kind of the catalyst or the kickstart when I've run into kind of that creativity wall. The other thing that I always carry with me is music. Now, in my case, I have my iPod with my music loaded on it, and everybody has kind of their favorite music and the music you play in the background when you're trying to get those creative juices flowing. And for my case, I like just music. I'm not into lyrics, songs, from the standpoint of having any kind of verbiage on it, any kind of vocal on it. I want instrumental only. Now, a couple of years ago, I came across a new category of music called creativity music. And basically, this is a new category. It was originally wrapped around a new kind of music that was created by Jeffrey Thompson. Now, the name of his music is called Creative Mind System. And what Dr. Thompson has done is, or what he claims to have done is uses sound frequency patterns to induce what he calls brainwave entertainment, basically audio signals to trigger certain kinds of brainwaves. And he's done this research over, I don't know, something like 25 years. But his whole objective here is to focus on what he calls creative mind pattern. And he's done MRIs of the brain, and when people are highly creative, there's a certain kind of creative mind pattern that gets triggered. And he believes that by embedding these sound frequencies inside of music, he can trigger this creative mind pattern and therefore heighten your creativity. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to just take the next 15 to 30 seconds. I'm going to play you a couple of segments out of two of the tracks for the creativity music, just so you can kind of get a feel for this. This is kind of a very interesting new area. I've listened to these for the last couple of years, and I like just kind of the instrumental. So for me, whether or not it actually helps, and I haven't done the scientific test to sit down and really concentrate on the music, and therefore then measure whether or not it actually improves my creativity. But when I'm flying on airplanes or when I'm sitting, on the weekends and I'm running through creativity exercises, this is the music that I play in the background. So here, take a listen, make up your own mind, but it's something that I have found to be useful to me. And for more information on the items that I've discussed in the toolkit, specifically the Whack Pack cards and the Creative Mind System music, visit killerinnovations.com. I'll have a link up there that'll take you to the books and tools section, and these two items will be updated in books and tools, and then therefore you can take a look at it and make your own decision. Moving on to segment number 2, prosperity denial. And now it's been a while since we've covered any kind of a weak signal, but this is one that I came across that when I read it, it actually applied to me. Now we all know that over the last 50 years, personal wealth and prosperity has grown significantly. In my case, it was my parents who went through the Depression. Through my entire lifetime, I've seen the most significant economic boom ever experienced by man. Even in emerging markets, what we call the BRIC markets, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, you've seen this absolute explosion in the middle class. At the same time, there are still these perceptions amongst the users, really this unfound resistance to spending money on minor indulgences. Now, in my family, my background is Scottish. Scottish are also kind of known to be somewhat on the cheap side. My family would call me extremely cheap. My eldest daughter is probably much cheaper than I am. And it's kind of this perception of what is exuberant versus what is responsible spending. And it's this perception that we are brought up with, whether it's by our family, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's cultural, whether it's by the social networks that we create. But there still seems to be this unfound resistance to spending money on even the minor indulgence. Let's take a look at Starbucks. Think about Starbucks costing normally about $3 for a latte. Now in the U.S., $3 equals 0.0048% of the median income here in the U.S. Now, Western Europe, that'll be a little different. Asia, even different more. But let's just use the U.S. as kind of the basis. Now, assuming that you have one latte a week, that equals 0.25% of a yearly basis for the median income. So less than 1/4 of 1%. That still leaves 99.75% of your annual income to spend on other things. Now, in some cases, people would argue or have this kind of prosperity denial, meaning that that's exuberant, I shouldn't spend that kind of money. But when you really think about it, it becomes such a minor expense. And if it gives you enjoyment, particularly given the struggles and challenges of day-to-day life. Having those little bit of minor indulgences can go a long way towards changing attitude. Now, the challenge, however, is that if you're introducing a killer innovation that is a minor indulgence, you'll need to change the attitude of your customers who suffer from this prosperity denial. Now, that's not easy to do. Starbucks didn't do it just by charging $3 a cup of coffee and then trying to convince you that it was a good thing. It was around the whole Starbucks experience, the coffee shop, being able to sit around and relax. So it wasn't just the $3 cup of coffee. It was this be able to indulge yourself, not just by the drink, but the indulgence of the entire experience. So again, if you're going to introduce killer innovation that is a minor indulgence, you have to just recognize that you have this trend of this prosperity denial that you have to get over. You have to get your customers to change their attitude that it's okay to have these minor indulgences. And you have to convince them that small indulgences is not a recipe for bankruptcy, and most importantly, it's not a sin. Segment 3, Killer Question of the Week. This week's killer question is tied to Segment 2 with regards to the prosperity denial. And so this week's question is, what customer attitude exists about the purchasing of my product or service? One more time. What customer attitude exists about the purchasing of my product or service? Is it an indulgence such as coffee at Starbucks, a spa treatment? Does it have some kind of exclusivity attached to it like Porsche? So there's a customer purchasing attitude that if you buy a Porsche, you're going to get that's a certain social class that has a certain amount of exclusivity. The follow-on question is, how do you minimize or maximize these attitudes? Now, some of these attitudes can be positive from the standpoint of increased value. They could be negative from the standpoint of having customers resist buying it because of a certain perspective or a certain attitude. So again, how do you minimize or maximize these attitudes? So for instance, minimizing this perception of it being an unnecessary indulgence. Do you really need to spend $3 on a cup of Starbucks coffee when you can have Folgers instant coffee and a glass of water? At the same time, you also may want to maximize some of these attitudes around value and quality. For instance, I'm in the market right now for a new home stereo and looking at both Sony and Bose. One, because of the quality and the name brand. So again, how do you minimize or maximize these attitudes? And part of this challenge is that you have to do a lot of research, not to get to the obvious attitudes, but to get to the unobvious attitudes. And this requires a lot of observation. So this gets back to what we've talked about in previous podcasts about spending time with the customer. And this is not something that you're going to get answered in a 10-minute survey. This is going to be something that I think you're going to have to actually get into the shoes of your customer, actually spend time with your customers, and actually understand how they go through the purchasing decisions on a variety of products or services. So again, this week's killer question is, what customer attitude exists about the purchasing of my product or service? And then the follow-on question is how do I minimize or maximize these attitudes? And with that, thanks for listening. Remember to vote. Go out to podcastalley.com and vote for your favorite podcast. It's the easiest way for you to say thanks to the producers of your favorite podcast. Also, send feedback. I'm looking for audio feedback to put into show number 50. You can send it to me by email, or you can call the voicemail feedback line at 703-636-4460. The email address is podcast@killerinnovations.com. Visit thekillerinnovations.com for the new links to books and tools, where I'll make sure that it's updated for the Whack Pack cards and for the creativity music. Also, there'll be a new link for events, and that'll be locations, dates of where I will be for upcoming events, and hopefully we can set up times to actually have get together face to face. With that, get subscribed, get others to subscribe, share the impact of the podcast with others. And this week, find a need, get creative about solving it, and then take action to solve it. Have a great week. Bye-bye.